Hi everyone, this is audap. Let's check out Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, running on PlayStation 5. Now this game's also available on Nintendo Switch. I figured that this might need some extra oomph in order to run, since there is some emulation of some games which weren't previously available from the Atari vaults. Let's see, what do we have for options? Not much. Not much at all. What do we got here? We got Arcade Origins. The birth of the console, highs and lows, dawn of PCs, 1990s and beyond. Okay, so there's actually quite a bit to cover here, so we'll go through as much as we can. Let's see, in the beginning, in a world where pinball was king, two engineers dreamed that coin-operated games played on computers could become the next big thing. A company called Syzygy was where it all started. Syzygy? First arcade game, Computer Space, was designed by Atari co-founders Ted Dabney and Nolan Bushnell and manufactured by Nutting Associates. Nutting Associates. Us nerds have never been mature. It was based on the 1962 computer game Space War. In the year 2000, former Atari employee Jerry Jessup saw a newspaper ad for a computer space machine in a Quonset hut on a sunflower seed farm in California. He found the first computer space machine ever manufactured. Alicorn's business card. Dabney and Bushnell named their company Syzygy Engineering after a term for the direct alignment of the sun, the moon, and the earth during an eclipse. Alan Alicorn, who had worked with Dabney and Bushnell at their previous workspace, was the first engineering hire at Syzygy. It's kind of even hard to say. This was his business card during those early days. Oh, interesting. Is this just all history? Are there no games here? Yeah, this is like the history. Well, I mean, I'd certainly like to look at all this. Pong.
You know what the Atari motto is? Innovative leisure, right? Well, it didn't say innovative arcade games. It didn't say innovative video games. It said innovative leisure. It was broad from day one. I mean, Nolan always had a consumer game in his mind because that's what he hired me to do. And I
Look at this guy.
doing the wrong thing and making a hit coin-op game, right? When I was at Ampex, I learned how to make sync generators, synchronizing.
Oh, God, was he crying?
Fundamental
I was on the video before.
circuit necessary to get a TV signal because we had to generate an analog signal. So you do that and you get the ball at one speed and you put paddles up, and it's a very, very boring game. And so I added the speed up and I added the angles off of that, just, you know, to make it playable, interesting. And so it started getting a little interesting. That's cute. And Nolan said, well, it's got to have score. We had a pretty good game, and hey, great. So what are you going to do for sound? He goes, sound? I'm already over budget. What am I going to do? Nolan said, well, I want the sound of a roar of a crowd of thousands applauding your win. And Ted said, I want boos and hisses. And I'm thinking, how do I do that? Listen, I got video. I got the goddamn game up. Now you wanted me to do this. I'll be right back. So I pissed around for a day and poked around sounds that already existed in the vertical sync generator and gated them out with the 555 timer. I love it. Years later, the sound is so well thought out, so appropriate. It was like, are you kidding me? It was just, you know, just thrown together in spite of what the boss said. And so that was how Pong came to be.
Oh, fascinating. Can we play Pong? I mean, there's no AI in Pong. It was It's that primitive, you know. You can play it with the left and right stick if you want to. This is a test of your hand-eye coordination, though. Thankfully, the ball moves slow enough. Oh, holy crap! Yeah, I remember one of the TVs we bought when I was growing up. One of the deals was if you bought it from one of these local superstores, that it actually came with a Pong machine. So that was my first exposure to Pong. Is we got Pong with our TV, and it was a super big deal back then. Pong still wasn't. Well, it was kind of expensive, number one, and it still, because of the price, it still wasn't something that was, too terribly common. But it was kind of getting there. It was getting into mainstream hands. So, yeah, I think that TV was like a 12-inch color TV. Oh my god. If I remember correctly. Might have been a little bit bigger than that, but yeah, it was obviously a small TV, but it still weighed a ton. That old CRT technology is certainly not lightweight and compact in any way, shape, or form. And yeah, it was the kind of Pong game that it just hooked up directly to the TV, using these little antenna, little loop antenna brackets. There'd be two screws in the back you could screw it into. The picture was always crappy and fuzzy. You could never, ever get a clear picture of Pong playing it. But yeah, it was just two controllers that were directly, soldered into the unit, and it was just a dial. Two controllers with a dial on it, and that was Pong. At least the one that we had. And again, no AI, so if you played a game of Pong, you would have to play with another person. It wasn't just a single player affair. Most games in the early days of gaming were, did not have any sort of sophisticated AI driving them, or even primitive AI. So yeah, you had to play with another person. And of course, I was the only one in the family that was like fascinated by gaming. Gaming was just a kind of a curiosity for everyone else in my family. An expensive curiosity. Oh my god. Boy, I'm a pretty difficult opponent against myself. Let me tell you this. But yeah, I was part of the generation that had Pong at home. So, and again, at that time, Pong was, getting very, very popular, but it wasn't like everybody had a Pong machine. Oh, okay, we can set some filters on here. Oh, interesting. Legend of the Broken Pong Machine. One of the often told stories of the original, or the origin of the game industry, is the tale of Al Alcorn being called by the manager of Andy Capp's, the Sunnyvale bar where the first Pong prototype was on display, to fix the broken machine. Alcorn and many other gaming industry legends recount the tale in this video feature. Oh yeah, I mean, this is super interesting. This is definitely a much more in-depth history than I would have expected. I think for this alone, this game is worth buying, just to see all the history behind the behind the ancient Atari. Not the Atari that we know of now. Quadra Tank? Man, I've never even heard of some of this. Space Run? For Atari's second game, it went back to the space genre, Space Race. Challenged 2 players to get their spaceship to the top of the screen first while dodging an asteroid field. Although space games would eventually be some of the top earners at the arcade, Space Race was not a success. So that was their second game, huh? Fourth game, Simple Maze Game, Gotcha. Which one player attempted to catch the other player? What made Gotcha controversial were the pink domes covering the joysticks, which were meant to resemble breasts. Really? I get it. The game's risque flyer extended the metaphor. Ultimately, the domes were removed from the machine because of the cost concerns. Yeah, well, fake boobs cost a bit, I'll tell you. Touch Me, an Atari coin-operated machine called Touch Me, was not a video game, but an electronic device that challenged a player to repeat an ever-lengthening pattern of button presses. Oh, sort of like Simon Says, then. Ralph Baer, the inventor of the home gaming consoles, saw a Touch Me machine and was inspired to improve on it to create the iconic game Simon. So, yeah, interesting. Key games. While Atari was quite successful in 1973, it felt it was being held back by the fact that coin-operated machine distributors wanted exclusive agreements. So it created a competitor called Key Games, a separate company headed up by Joe Keenan that would sell similar machines to other distributors. Key's game Elimination was released by Atari as Quadrapong. Interesting. That's how you get around it, huh? Tank is a military combat game. The military combat game was the only title produced by Key Games that was not a clone of an Atari product. Shortly after its release, Atari formally acquired Key, bringing an end to the fiction that they were competitive rivals. However, the Key Game division continued operating under its own label, under its own name until 1978. Tank, huh? Wow, look at that thing. 2 joysticks. Old-fashioned controls. Quadra Tank, the first entry in the Tank series since 1978. Quadra Tank is a 4-player twist on the classic tank combat gameplay developed in 2022 by Digital Eclipse. It combines features from all tank games, letting you play on ice. Oh, so this is like a new game.
Ready.
Oh god. Combat. Yes. I don't think in my day... I don't think in my day the 2600 came with combat. I think we got air-sea battle. God, it's been so long since... I can't remember. Maybe it was combat that came with ours. But we also got like the paddles and stuff.
Range. Bounce.
So you can rotate the turret. Oh, we can do it separately. No way I have. Very much in the spirit of combat. No AI. Had to play with 2 players. Interesting, they kind of kept the very simple aesthetic. I'm sure this could be some fun with some other players, but obviously I don't have any here for this purposes of this. Interesting, yeah. A new version of combat. Who would have thought, huh? Transistors to CPUs. Home Pong. Yeah, I think that might have been the Pong game. Oh, no, it wasn't this. My The Pong that I remember had separate controllers that were on a wire. That one looks like it's attached as one unit. Oh, Atari Pinball. Yeah, Eugene Jarvis. Atari's pinball problem. Eugene Jarvis, who would go on to create video game hits like Defender, joined Atari in 1977 to program the processors that controlled his new pinball games. What he found was a company that, in his view, was making all the wrong decisions about pinball design. Atari entered the pinball market in 1977 with the Atarians, which featured a wide body playfield that was 27 inches wide compared to the standard machine's approximate 20-inch width. It was also an early example of a pinball game controlled by a computer processor versus simply being built out of electromechanical parts. Interesting, huh? I don't think I've ever played these pinball games. I mean, I imagine these would be hard to get a hold of. Breakout, famously designed by Apple founders Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Breakout was essentially a single-player Pong, in which the player had to continually deflect a bouncing ball back to the top of the screen to break rows of bricks. It was a smashing success, including in Japan, where it inspired later creations of Space Invaders by Taito. We can play the original Breakout. Neo Breakout. Really? Oh, they're actually going the extra mile with this. It's been a long time since I've seen Digital Eclipse's logo anywhere, so I'm surprised that the company's still around. I know, we were just playing Arkanoid Lives, or Revenge, or whatever it was called. This is like the original game. Oh, so the right stick moves fast, and then the left stick moves slow. Kind of clever. I know some people ask me why I don't like Arkanoid, but you gotta remember that this is, or at least the 2600 version of this game is what I played, and I played a lot of it, so, like, I don't find the Breakout formula all that exciting, considering it's, you know, almost 50 years old. And while Arkanoid did add lots of, lots of new gimmicks with power-ups and, you know, different size paddles and, you know, lots of different kinds of mazes. You know, essentially, I'm just reminded of playing this old game of Breakout. And they've never really gotten the feel of the paddles right. I mean, I think this is close with the right stick accelerating. Oh, son of a bitch. Super weird that this ends up actually being more fun than Arkanoid. Okay, well. Clash of Cultures. In November 1976, Warner Communications acquired Atari for $26 million, about $130 million in 2022. Atari's main reason for seeking a buyer was that it needed funding to produce its first game console with interchangeable cartridges, the Atari VCS. But the marriage of Atari's freewheeling spirit and Warner's corporate structure would prove an uneasy one. Warner Communications, for its part, was eager to expand its entertainment holdings, seeing video games as an entertainment industry with growth potential. After buying Atari, it quickly began investing more money into it to grow the business. Yeah, I do sort of remember this era when Warner bought it. And Warner, over the years, has kind of like bought and sold American game development, over the years. So they've always like dipped their hand into gaming, but never stuck with it. They do drugs at Atari. One of the most often heard stories about Atari game design is that drugs were often involved. We put the question directly to the designers who were there and found that everyone's experience was quite different. Okay, I gotta see this.
You will hear stories of hot tubs in the lobby and drug use in the office, and I'm here to tell you that none of that happened in my department.
We started smoking pot right in our office. Rob and I were like the premier pot. Sorry, Rob. I and some other person who occasionally shared an office with me for 5 years at Atari, however that frickin' worked, we would just fire up right in the office. It's like, who knows why? It's like, this is like, it's illegal. It's like, it wasn't even a sense of privilege. It was just mindlessness.
I worked in a satellite office. I started in 1977, which was still pretty early. It was only 18 months since the 2600 came out. But there was no hot tub in the lobby of the office that I went to. There was no drug use in Atari, though I don't doubt that it was over where Howard and Todd Fry were working.
Drugs were consumed at Atari by all kinds of people at all levels of management, from the bottom to the top, all over engineering. Not everybody.
Subtle
did
jab
drugs,
there.
but some people did, and some people enjoyed them, and some people abused them, and some people went to the hospital on them. And but by and large, drugs were a relatively nominal factor. Drugs, there was a lot of marijuana, and it was participated a lot in brainstorming. So we had the way of, trying to incorporate drugs into our productivity model.
I went home and I smoked a joint, a little bit of cocaine and a little bit of psilocybin in it. And I was sitting there, it was about half gone when I realized, oh, you could do that. And it's like I put it out and I went and I wrote a page of notes. And my design for that kernel was exactly what it ended up shipping. It was like, it was a tremendous amount of effort actually to get everything organized.
They did have good deliveries of cannabis in the inter-office mail. That was probably the primary use of those yellow manila envelopes. I think it was Fridays or Monday. I think it was Fridays when you get these really thick envelopes coming through the system. And it was weird. There was a guy working there, and his job was he was the weed dealer. That was his sole job at the whole company.
And there was a very straight German VP of hardware down the hallway in the building. I have no idea. He complained to management about the smell of pot smoke in the corridors. So they got him an office in a different building.
I have been asthmatic since I've been 12. I need drugs to breathe. I did not do drugs because drugs to me were something that let you get up in the morning, and breathe. So nor did I think I wanted to mix those things. The high of me was doing the work, and I was always a happy guy. So I just didn't feel I needed it. So I never did drugs, but there were a lot there.
Don't put too much stock in the fact that every Atari employee was stoned out of their minds while making games.
I mean, there was all kinds of drugs consumed at Atari, but the real drug at Atari was going into a store and seeing your product, seeing your game on a shelf.
Oh, there you go, huh? Sprint 8, 8-player driving game. Sprint 8 was a massive cabinet that featured 8 steering wheels, 8 sets of gas brake pedals arranged around a monitor that pointed upwards, allowing 8 friends or enemies to race simultaneously. Oh, so weird. Playing like that all the time? My god. Atari video music? Oh yeah, I mean, we could dig into this for a long, long time. Well, there's so much in here. Super Breakout, yeah, definitely remember that. Lunar Lander, oh yeah. This is one of the few games that I saw in one of the really large nickel arcades. In the early 90s, I think. It was the first time I ever played it, or even seen it. It's a pretty fascinating game. VCTR, SCTR, Tribute to the Classic Vector Graphics Era Digital Clips presents VCTR, SCTR, original game developed by 2022 that blends the best elements of Lunar Lander, Asteroids, and other vector-based arcade games. Oh, well, let's check it out. Move and fire. Shield. Okay. This is like completely fascinating. I mean, you might have to be a Jurassic gamer to appreciate this, but what is this? Oh, don't touch that, I guess. I don't know. If I would have seen this game growing up, I would have just pissed myself. I remember it like Tax Scan, which was a game by Sega. I remember seeing that in the arcades and just being really fascinated that you could have a 3D vector game or a 2D vector game, which you were having like an overhead shooting game, and then the perspective would change and you would show it in the middle of the screen. Oh, we got Tempest too. Wow, what the heck is going on here? Wow, I mean, this thing is completely fascinating. Good job, Digital Eclipse. I mean, you disappeared for so many years, and look what you come out with. Interesting. Touch Me. After the success of handheld game Simon, which took inspiration from Atari's 1974 arcade game Touch Me, Atari released a handheld version of Touch Me that, in turn, took inspiration from Simon. Atari planned to release more handheld games, but this was the only one that shipped. In this collection, you can play a recreated version of the main gameplay mode of handheld Touch Me. Wow. Fascinating, man. Super Breakout handheld advertisement. Super Breakout for handhelds, huh? Asteroids. Oh, yes. By far Atari's biggest selling arcade game of all time, Asteroids was created by Lyle Raines and Ed Logg based on Wendy Allen's Lunar Lander hardware. It pulled in more quarters than any other game in the year to follow, becoming the first Smash arcade hit of the 1980s. It was also the first game with a high-score initials leaderboard. Smaller cabinets meant games could be placed in locations where space was tight, so Asteroids was offered in cabaret and horizontal cocktail table versions, as well as the standard upright cabinet. I think this is the one I remember playing, the smaller one, and the cocktail too. Asteroids was initially being developed as a raster game called Planet Grab with different play dynamics. The object of the game was to claim more planets than your opponent. Missile Command. Okay, we just recently played Missile Command Recharged. Yeah, I remember those. I remember that flyer art from the 2600 days. So is this like real Missile Command? Missile Command? It is. Oh wow. Oh boy, how we're gonna control this? It was a trackball and 3 buttons, if I remember right. Okay, the 3 buttons correspond to the way what I would think they would correspond to. But the color is so vibrant. Oh god, I forgot how hard this game is. I mean, it immediately comes after you. Yeah, that's amazing. Old school asteroids. That's right, it's a separate button to thrust. It's not just up to thrust, like the 2600 game. Oh boy, memories. Cosmos, holographic handheld. In January 1981, Atari announced that it would release Cosmos, a handheld gaming system in which each game would be displayed atop a custom hologram image. Game graphics were made up of simple LED lights, but the holograms provided a dynamic, realistic backdrop. Atari never released Cosmos. Yeah, I can't imagine why. It would have been fascinating, though, if they would have managed to release it. America, the giant arcade, no longer novelties relegated to the back of pinball parlors. Coin-operated video games became ubiquitous in the early 90s, or early 1980s. Games could now be found not only in thousands of dedicated arcades, but also in bowling alleys, restaurants, laundromats, supermarkets, practically anywhere people might be found with quarters in their pockets. A little time on their hands. Very much true. Asteroids Deluxe. Excellent stuff here. Warlords. Never got into it, but I knew it was popular. Centipede. It's a classic. One of my favorite games. Tempest, which has, strangely enough, has been done, much, much better by, I can't remember his name. But Tempest 2000 and 3000, 4000, something that's regularly updated. Done really well. Maze Invaders. I don't think I've ever played this one, with a visual style reminiscent of Pac-Man, which was very popular in arcades at the time. Edlog's game Maze Invaders combined navigation of a dynamic shifting maze with shooting action. After it performed poorly in the focus test, however, Maze Invaders was cancelled, although a prototype version has been preserved as playable here. Oh, wow. Well, let's play it then. Oh, look at this guy. God, he's been in other games too. Didn't we just play a game with a guy that looked just like this? Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me of Berserk. Oh, I can see, like, early on, this is not getting this. Listen to those old sounds. Again, there's a lot of nostalgia playing for me on this stuff. I mean, I'm glad games look better than this. Not the kind of person that's so nostalgic that I want like new games to look just like old games. I'm happy new games look the way they do. And, thankfully nostalgia isn't the thing that drives me. And I feel like a lot of people are driven by nostalgia. I loved improved graphics. I buy a new PC every couple of years because I love improved graphics. I buy new consoles every couple of years because I love improved graphics. Huh, that's actually kind of fun. I'm not surprised that it didn't test well, but it's a good game. Oh yes, Space Duel. This one always required 2 players, so I never really got to play a lot of it. I think I own this on this 2600 Gravatar. Well, again, we just played the recharge version of Gravatar. Millipede. I didn't like it as much as Centipede, but that's because it was a much, much harder game. A more challenging, more complex version of Centipede, Millipede's development was led by Ed Logg, although without Donna Bailey's input. The well-known game and hardware developed by Mark Cerny, then just 18 years old and new hired Atari, worked on Millipede. So, Cerny's always been a hardware guy. Liberator. Massive rotating plants displayed at the center of the screen gave Liberator a distinctive eye-catching draw using characters from Atari Force comic series by DC. Liberator played like Missile Command in reverse, shoot down missiles that are being fired from the planet's surface. Oh, I don't think I ever played this one. Check this one out. Wow, it even has a continue, huh? Quantum, designed by Betty Ryan of General Computer Corporation. Quantum made unique use of a trackball controller combined with the detailed graphics of a color vector monitor, which drew curved lines to encircle atomic particles, clearing them off the board. If they got a high score, they could not just leave their initials, but their signature. Actually kind of fun. I imagine this would have been like a hectic game to play with a trackball, though. It's funny, like the same concept would be used later on in like Knights, right? Look at that. Wow. Again, incredibly fascinating. Aka R, a colorful shooter by Dave Ralston and Mike Halley, named apparently derived from the phrase, also known as another Ralston Halley, with some extra letters. Aka R was produced in 1982, but never officially released. What is it? Players defend a central turret from enemies on all sides. This fast-paced game that shares some gameplay elements with Missile Command. After testing at the prototype stage, Atari chose not to manufacture the game, making this arcade prototype quite rare. Oh, what an attract screen. Yeah, it takes a little getting used to. That's for sure. Not bad. Just hard to play. Black Widow. Rather than being sold as a full arcade cabinet, Black Widow was only offered as a conversion kit that arcade operators could install to turn their Gravatar machines into a game more closely resembling Tempest. Black Widow was a very early example of a twin-stick shooter, which the player used one stick to move and the other to fire in all directions. Yeah, I think we just played the recharge version of this too. Alright, Food Fight, actually one of my favorite games. I played this on the 7800 quite a bit. See, while most of Atari's arcade games tended to be abstract and not feature recognizable characters, the movement towards marketable mascots in the mid-80s produced Food Fight, starring a bright-eyed, blonde-haired Charlie Chuck, young lad who just wants to steal an ice cream cone without angry chefs getting in his way. God, have I ever played the original? I don't know if I ever have. Ah, yes. One of my favorite games. Very, very simple, but pretty addicting. Crystal Castle, of course. Another colorful mascot-based game was Crystal Castle, starring Bentley Bear. Originally played with a trackball, Crystal Castle's mazes were Rendered in a unique Studio 3D style that gives it a distinctive look, Bentley would go on to star in Atari carts for the Atari Jaguar. I remember that. I owned that one game back in the day. Yeah, Crystal Castle's another classic. Wow, there's a lot of stuff in here. Firefox, I remember this game. Laserdisc game. Although I understand why they wouldn't have this playable here. Cloak and Dagger, iRobot. Another classic. Really hard to understand at first, but once you got the hang of it, it was cool stuff. Yeah, look at that. I mean, polygons? And again, this may not seem like a big deal looking at it now with modern eyes, but I mean, this stuff was absolutely revolutionary at the time. You'd never really seen polygons in an arcade game, or really in most games. You know, it was almost always sprites. Oh, God. I keep forgetting about the eye. Oh, I didn't mean to jump. And actually, we can't forget Major Havoc. I used to play this quite a bit. Mainly because it was like a lot of different kinds of gameplay styles in a game. You had a little breakout section at first, and you have like a platforming game, shooting game. They stuck in a little lunar lander section here, where you're landing on the, landing on the enemy base. I mean, game has everything. Yeah, I'm actually surprised there are so many of these arcade originals in here. I wasn't expecting that at all. Birth of the console. Again, I love this this timeline and all this all this documentation. It's super fascinating, especially if you grew up for the era, or even if you didn't grow up through the era. I think it's interesting to see how the origins of gaming, and certainly home gaming with the 2600. Surround. Outlaw, Canyon Bomber, 3D Tic-Tac-Toe, and never did get it. Keyboard controllers, oh yeah, definitely remember that. Don't watch TV tonight, play it. Yeah, Activision, still around today. Still one of the biggest third-party game manufacturers in the world. Nice, the old adventure. Kind of the first RPG, really. Programming the VCS is hard, yes, definitely. The programmers, or the designers of the VCS, thought it would be obsolete quickly. After all, it was only intended to play Tank and Pong. 4 years later, it was more popular than ever, and game designers had to keep squeezing more out of it. In this video, several game designers discuss why Atari VCS programming was so uniquely challenging. Yeah, well, there's tons of reasons why. My goodness. Yeah. 2600 version of Missile Command. I played this a lot as a kid. Warlords. I think I owned this, but because it required multiple players, I was never able to play it that much. Again, I was really the only gamer in the household. Asteroids. Played a ton of Asteroids. 2600 Asteroids. 1981, Atari had an estimated 80% share of the home video game market and accounted for 1/3 of Warner's earnings, pulling over $1 billion in revenue. Warner's success during that period was widely credited for the explosion of home video games. Yeah, no doubt about it. Super Breakout? Originally released as a Sears store exclusive for the 1981 holiday season, the VCS version of Super Breakout saw a wide release in early 1982, featuring iconic cover art by Cliff Spohn that set the action in outer space. Haunted House. I was actually going to play this game for the Halloween stream, but it is a very, very confusing game. I don't think I ever even would have completed one of the mazes. Yar's Revenge. That's a classic. I think there's a new version of this coming out soon. It sucked designing Yar's Revenge. There was no one way to make a VCS game for Howard Scott Warsaw. The process began not with gameplay, but with the desire to see something cool on the screen. But for a while, it sucked as a game. It's definitely very, very original, that's for sure. In the summer of 1982, Atari was on top of the world. Its games sold millions of copies each. Millions of people around the world played Atari every day, and major new games were on the horizon. But the video game industry's fortunes were about to turn. Yes, the great crash. All right, and television. I remember that coming out and being very questionable of the quality. In fact, I don't think I ever knew anyone that owned an Intellivision. I only saw it like in the department stores where they had displays to play it, and it was not a fun system to play. Although I was fascinated by Discs of Tron, which was only available on that system at the time. Atari Age. That's right, the Atari Club. I do remember that. I don't think I ever subscribed to this, though. I would have been too young to be able to buy a subscription. And we were too broke to afford something silly like a magazine subscription. Oh, Demons and Diamonds. I didn't realize this was Atari. I thought it was a third-party game for some reason. Written by Nick Turner and Alan Murphy, the VCS exclusive sent players to the shooting art gallery at the Cosmic Carnival. Aimed at pre-teen players, Demons and Diamonds offered a more lighthearted, more accessible take on target shooting genre. Yeah, wow. Real Sports. Real Sports Baseball. Well, these games were all terrible. Absolutely terrible. Although I guess they do have like a... Oh, I thought it was Sword Quest. Sword Quest, I remember this quite well. Although I played this well after the video game crash. Sword Quest Earthworld for Atari's most ambitious project for the VCS, Sword Quest was to be a 4-game series, each game hiding a complex puzzle that would lead to a single player winning a $25,000 prize crafted from gold and gemstones. The first game release was Sword Quest Earthworld, programmed by Dan Hitchens. Yeah, this is about as esoteric as a game can be, and the clues on finding the puzzle are also incredibly esoteric. It's pretty famously known. You can certainly look up some YouTube videos on Sword Quest and the solutions and how to get these solutions. But they involved, looking at the manual and the comic book that came with it and all sorts of fun stuff. Yeah, I remember owning this Sword Quest Earthworld. You mean you needed it to solve the puzzles? That's right. Solution revealed, winner named. In mid-1983, Atari revealed the official solution to Sword Quest Earthworld in an Atari Age magazine, then named the winner of the first contest, Stephen Bell of St. Clair, Michigan, who was awarded the Solid Gold Talisman. The official Atari handshake. Rebus fun. The November-December 1982 issue of Atari Age magazine presented readers with its Rebus contest, challenging them to figure out the names of 6 different Atari video games from the pictures. The contest has been over 40 years now, but try it anyway. Answers on the second page of the gallery. I wouldn't be able to. Atari 5200, the infamous Atari 5200. I remember wanting one of these really, really badly. But again, very expensive to be a gamer back in these days. It was incredibly difficult to, number one, to get a hold of a game console necessarily, and then the expense of the console and the games was, only for, well, certainly not for me growing up. Only for people who had a lot of disposable income. In late 1982, 5 years after the launch of the VCS, Atari finally released a next-generation game console, which it called the Atari 5200. The technology inside was roughly equivalent to that of the Atari 400 and 800 home computers, and the games were largely similar to the computer versions. Yes, the infamous controller, one of the Atari 5200's most unique features, and the one that is most derided for this day, and the most derided for to this day, was its analog control stick. This gave players more fine-tuned control over gameplay, but since the stick did not automatically center itself, like modern analog sticks, it was much less fun to use. Yes, analog gaming. Analog control sticks. 1982. Hard to believe, huh? Yes, the trackball. And pretty much impossible to find like a working stick now. Certainly nothing original. I don't even think they sell reasonable knockoffs of the 5200 controller. Let's see, 5200 and Atari tragedy. In the words of the former Atari engineer Jerry Jessup, the 5200 was a good idea gone horribly wrong. In this video, Jessup, Howard Scott Warsaw, and Todd Fry explain how the 5200 was released into the market over the objections of Atari's engineers. Not a surprise. Super Breakout, 5200 version. Each 5200 came with a copy of Super Breakout packed in. This was a slightly upgraded version of the home computer game that was released in 1979. In other words, although it was fun, it was 3 years old and not a great showcase for what the 5200 could do in 1982. Missile Command. Missile Command was another early 5200 game that was a direct port of the 400-800 computer version, although in this case the computer version had just been released in 1981, so it was still a fresher experience. Star Raiders. Oh yes, Star Raiders. The Outer Space Combat Star Raiders is considered the killer app for Atari's line of computers, but the 5200 version, with its various small improvements to the design, is generally considered to be the definitive edition. Yeah, I think I played the 2600 version of this, and it came with like a number pad. I remember playing a lot of it. I don't know why. It wasn't that great, but I played a lot of it. 5200 or 2600 Centipede. Sword Quest Fireworld, the second of the 4-game Sword Quest cycle. Fireworld was a program by Todd Fry. Like Earthworld, it contained an intricate puzzle that was only solvable through careful observation of the game and the included comic book. I don't think I ever owned... Let's see, Atari unveiled the solution to Sword Quest Fireworld in the September-October 1983 issue of Atari Age. In the next issue, it announced that Michael Rideout of Aiken, South Carolina, had won the prize after a showdown between 50 finalists at Atari's Sunnyvale, California office. Oh, I've never played this. I don't even think I was able to ever find a copy of it. Look at that door animations. Resident Evil, eat your heart out. It's like, what are you doing here? Exactly, right? Just assuming I avoid this stuff. You can't shoot or anything, so... Oh, can't go there, huh? I mean, look at what they were trying to do with so little. It's like a game of exploration and all these mini games everywhere. It's like impossible to catch all this stuff. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think I'd have to try this quite a few times in order to get it. I don't know if you can really even get it. Quadrun? Real Sports Soccer? Like I said, all these real sports games completely sucked. The crash in 1983, the incredible momentum of the video game market in America came to a screeching halt. Sales plummeted, game makers lost millions of dollars, and many went out of business entirely. In this video feature, Atari designers and players discuss the conditions that led to the crash. You know, conditions which, obviously when Nintendo came back into the scene to try to revive the market, they went through a number of very controversial measures in order to keep the game market alive. But that may be another video. Miner 2049er. I don't think I ever owned this one. Saboteur, never owned this one either. Atari designer Howard Scott Warsaw's final game would have been a shooter called Saboteur. Warsaw left the company before it was completed and it was never released. This is a playable version of a nearly finished prototype. Really? Oh wow, that was like a title screen. Wow, what do I do exactly? I'm not entirely sure. I have no idea what's going on. But this was gaming on the 2600. Not having any idea what was going on. Trying to figure it out and have fun with it. Huh. Boy, interesting, huh? 2600 version of Gravatar. Swordcrest Waterworld. They're giving the... Oh, I didn't think they finished Waterworld. I didn't know that, huh? The third in the Sword Quest series, Waterworld was sold exclusively through the Atari Club mail order service, and original cartridges are thus very difficult to find in any condition today. Also very true. Sword Quest Airworld. Atari never released Sword Quest Airworld, and thus it never gave out the final prizes of the Philosopher's Stone or the Sword of Ultimate Sorcery. In this all-new game created in 2022 for the Atari's 50th anniversary, you can explore what Airworld could have been. Oh my goodness. Look at that title screen. Craziness, huh? You can pick stuff up, see? What we're supposed to do? No idea. These games were very esoteric. Make your own left-handed joystick. Customize your game controller was a lot easier on the VCS. In this Atari Age article from the July-August 1983 issue, an Atari hardware engineer explains how you can create a left-handed joystick in minutes just by swapping a few wires. Actually, I probably would have liked that back in these days. I think in these days I played the 2600 left-handed. You know, I would use. I think traditionally it was left-handed with the joystick, and no, it was right-hand with the joystick, and then left-hand for the button. I think, or maybe it was the other way around. Anyway, I played it the opposite way of how most people played it back then. 2600 version of Millipede. A prototype of Millipede on the 5200. I didn't realize this was cancelled. I thought they finished this. Well, Atari planned to also release a version of Millipede on the 5200 console to cancel this version before it could be released. Okay, so it was finished, but never released. Again, interesting. I mean, I think this will be the first time a lot of players will be able to play 5200 games, you know, without going the traditional emulation route. And since the 5200 was, you know, had an analog joystick, I mean, it kind of plays perfectly with with a modern console controller. I mean, I would have been super happy with this had I ever had an opportunity to buy a 5200. Yeah, wow, really fascinating. Crystal Castle's 2600 version. Meh. Warner sold Atari's home and computer division to Jack Tramiel. Infamous Jack Tramiel, the former CEO of Commodore in 1984. Tramiel laid off most of the staff, slimming Atari down considerably to focus on a new generation of home computers, not video games. I mean, he did give us the Atari ST line of computers, so not a complete loss. But Probably not the most savvy boss. I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep working at Atari, and a little while later, a layoff package came, and that was one of the saddest moments in my life. Howard Scott Warsaw, designer of Yar's Revenge. Yeah. Bounty Bob Strikes Back. Very few console games were released in America in 1985. One of them was Bounty Bob Strikes Back by Bill Hogue, the sequel to Miner 2049er. The Atari 5200 version, released in limited quantities to a few players still using the platform, was by far the rarest game on the system. Really? Well, let's play it then. Where am I? Oh, there I am. Oh, well, I suck. Okay, there's fall damage and Bounty Bob. Well, that was a disaster. Me playing a disaster, really. The Atari 7800, yes, I also own one of these. In fact, I still own a 7800. Believe it or not, still works. Originally meant to be released in 1984, the next generation Atari 7800 console was put on ice until the video game market started to make a comeback in 1986. In addition to playing its own lineup of games, it was fully backward compatible with the 2600. Pro-line controller, yes, the Pro controllers. But these were better. The ones that were sold in Europe, the joypads, although they came much later. Only sold in Europe, this gamepad gave players the controller similar to the ones included with the Nintendo and Sega game systems at the time. A small joystick could be screwed into the middle of the directional pad. Yeah, it came with like a little top for it, although it wasn't necessarily comfortable to use it. 7800 Asteroids, which I played a ton of when I was younger. 7800 Centipede, which, strangely enough, I didn't really feel was that good. What? But the Asteroids on the 7800, that was king. It was a great version of the game. Had these little shaded asteroids in different colors. It fires significantly faster. Which button it is to use the thruster. Ah, right trigger. Interesting how they map it. Oh well, I'm sure people aren't as fascinated about by 7800 asteroids as I am. 2600 Junior, I do kind of vaguely recall this thing. In addition to the 7800, Atari also rolled out a smaller budget price version of the 2600, retailing it for just $49.99. It was a very affordable alternative, and Atari began to put more 2600 games on the shelves. Solaris, this is actually one of the best 2600 games ever made. Really, way ahead of its time. Technical masterpiece of the 2600, Solaris was created by Star Raiders developer Doug Neubauer. He used every trick in the book to create something that looked light years ahead of any other 2600 game, showing just how versatile the 2600 hardware truly was. Very true. Absolutely fascinating game. I actually beat this game. Surprisingly, it was one of the games that you could beat. Secret Quest. Among the many developers that Atari contracted to create new 2600 games was Axelon, a software developer headed by Atari co-founder Nolan Bushnell. One of the first games, or one of the games Axelon created for Atari was Secret Quest, a lengthy adventure game that even had a password system. Wow. Atari after the crash. The VCS, or 2600 as it was now known, turned 10 years old in 1987, but a revitalized gaming market meant that there was still demand for the 2600 games. Designer Gary Kitchen, co-founder of Absolute Entertainment, soon found himself once again returning to the platform. That's right, Gary Kitchen. Remember him. Dark Chambers. This one is a fascinating one. Based on the 1983 computer game Dandy by John Pavlovich, Dark Chambers is a multiplayer dungeon-crawling action game that takes inspiration from pen and paper role-playing games. At first glance, most people look at this game and they think it is a derivative of Gauntlet, which is not. It doesn't really play like Gauntlet, but the original Dandy was on display at some computer game expo, and the original designer of Gauntlet saw Dandy and created his version of Dandy. So, yeah, Dandy is actually the original game. With Dark Chambers being a follow-up, or a different version of Dandy. So yeah, it's not Gauntlet that was the original. It was actually Dandy or Dark Chambers. So, pretty fascinating to know that this is the original game and not the other way around. I think I ever played the 7800 version of this. I don't think I owned one of these, or one of the 7800s. I remember always wanting one of these, but I never saw it in the game store. Again, you can see the inspiration for Gauntlet, but yeah, this came first. And you can also see the inspiration for like a pen and paper D&D. Yeah, I think I certainly would have been fascinated by this game had I ever found a copy of it. My 7800 heyday of playing. Again, you can see how it's a much deeper game than most of the games on the 7800, which were still, very much simple games that were not much more complex than the games made on the 7800. But here, certainly more complex, right? Yeah, I mean, I'll actually have to play that more later on. More than games. While the video game business crashed in the mid-1980s, the home computer business thrived, and Atari played a major part in bringing computers into homes. That's right. I think I also owned an Atari 800 XL, I think. Yeah, we didn't get the 400. 800. First gaming PC. Former Atari engineers David Crane and Jerry Jessup and game designer Ed Fries discussed how the first Atari computers were really souped-up game consoles and why everyone was just fine with that. It's kind of true nowadays, not really. If you're buying a home PC, likely you're buying it to play games, all the other stuff that you want to do nowadays is either done on a phone or a tablet, in rare cases, and laptops for those who are business-minded. But yeah, regular PCs, really game machines at this point in time. Star Raiders, that's right. Star Raiders were the Atari computers. The 830, before fiber and Wi-Fi, going online with your personal computer required a slightly different procedure, to say the least. The Atari 830 acoustic modem let you attach your telephone handset to your computer so you could dial up a local bulletin board and connect with other Atari users. Ah, yes, the days. Caverns of Mars. In the late 1981, Atari established the Atari Program Exchange, or APX, division that would publish and sell the best Atari computer programs submitted by users. The biggest APX hit was Caverns of Mars by Greg Christensen, a vertically scrolling shooter which the player infiltrated a cavern, set a bomb, then escaped. Atari later released this under its own label. Oh, fascinating. Never even heard of this. I'm assuming you shoot the fuel to get more fuel. Yeah, it's like a scramble, except it's vertical. Or Super Cobra, depending on, what era you played the famous Konami game in. What was essentially the very first Gradius game. Yeah, I can see why this is a big hit. It's actually kind of fun. It's kind of shades of River Raid. Oh my gosh. Wow, fascinating. Two families, Minor 2049er is the PC version, or the 400 version. Obviously it wasn't a PC. PC being specifically Atari, IBM-based clones. 1200 XL? Yeah, I think I earned the 800 XL if I remember right. In March 1983, Atari attempted to update its 8-bit computer line for the 1980s, producing the sleek, metallic, accented 1200 XL. The updated design concealed the fact that it was roughly identical to the 400 and 800 under the hood. The high $899 price tag made it such a non-starter that Atari took it off the market within months. Atari quickly moved to replace the failed 1200 XL with two cheaper models, the 600 and 800, which were fundamentally identical to the 400 and 800, but with more RAM. With this, the cheaper pricing, $199 and $299, combined with the updated look, were a hit. 800 XL in particular was Atari's best-selling computer model of all time. Yeah, I said I owned one as well. Atari Soft, new era. In June 1984, Jack Tramiel's company acquired the assets of the Atari computer and home gaming divisions from Warner Communications. Tramiel renamed the company Atari Corporation and set about developing a new 16-bit PC, aimed primarily at competing with his old company Commodore. And an old bone to pick, apparently. Yeah, the ST. I owned an ST much later, kind of after I can't remember the name of it, but yeah. I remember reading about it in a magazine. The Amiga was out, but very few people owned the Amiga. Certainly on this side of the world. Not true. Not so. Not true in West Europe, where the Amiga was quite popular. The Commodore 64 and the 128, and the ST kind of came along after that. And I always wanted to own one, but they never really sold any of the STs in stores, at least on my side of the world. And so I never had the opportunity. Always wanted one. Well, although obviously now it would you would just emulate the the STs. Interesting operating system too. That was all a GUI operating system. Well before the days of Windows. So again, totally fascinating to see the progression of operating systems being just a black screen and a prompt, or potentially just green text, to using a mouse as an integral part of an operating system. Food Fight XE version, huh? Let's see. Jack Strikes Back. Having been ousted by the company he founded, Commodore, just after it launched the Commodore 64 computer, new CEO Jack Tramiel was focused on defeating his former company. But with Atari and Commodore so focused on each other, it was Apple computers that ended up the most popular machines of the era. Very true. Although, again, quite a bit different in West Europe, in the UK specifically, where the Amiga and the ST fared quite well, even compared to the Macintosh. Macintosh really sort of caught on over here in the States, although, again, far outclassed by the IBM-compatible computers. I mean, many more IBM PCs and clone PCs versus Macintoshes, which were prohibitively expensive. Atari PC. By 1987, trends were clear. The IBM-compatible forerunners of today's modern PCs were dominating the home computer market. Atari even entered the market with the Atari PC, releasing the first models in 1987. The Atari portfolio. Before it left the computer business, Atari had one more first. The first palm-top PC, the Atari portfolio, compatible with the IBM standard. Portfolio let users do basic tasks like text editing and spreadsheets on a tiny device, then transfer the data to their home PC. It famously appeared in the film Terminator 2. Okay. I thought it sounded familiar. Atari's final computer was the Falcon, a 32-bit machine that was only produced for a year and is today a high-priced collector's item. Yeah, I remember seeing this one on the shelf, the Atari Falcon. It's funny, I guess I should have bought that a long time ago. But then again, I probably wouldn't have been able to keep it around or keep it working. Yump, created in 2007 by a 4-person team from Poland. Yump is an action game which a bouncy ball travels down a tube. The sophisticated graphics show how much can be done with 1970s hardware and decades of know-how. Really? What is this thing? It's got to load. It's usually a good sign. Oh my god, look at this thing. Wow. And obviously it doesn't look like much now, but that's fascinating. Okay, don't touch those. Wow, it's kind of hard to play, but it's interesting. Wow, the graphics are very impressive for an Atari 800 game. That's craziness. Into the 90s, ultimately, the dominance of the IBM-compatible PC meant Atari's exit from the computer business in the early 1990s. It was already planning a big move back into video games. Ah, yes, the Atari Jaguar. I actually love the Jaguar. But I also love the Jaguar because a lot of the developers and a lot of games brought over were from the the Atari ST Amiga world. Games developed in the UK primarily. So and at that time, I certainly loved the games, those kind of games that were made. So this was fascinating to me. See, I remember still sitting in the room with Jack, and Jack saying to all of us, let's go back to our roots. Let's do at least one more game system. Bill Raybuck, former Atari vice president. And the Atari Lynx also owned one of these. This thing was absolutely awesome. Way ahead of its time. Originally created by Epix, who was a well-known game developer, game publisher. And still very, very impressive piece of technology. Full scaling blitter, full color, portable, although batteries will only last you for 2 hours, maybe 3 if you were incredibly lucky. And yeah, sold for $180. I was actually, I think, working as a busser back in these days, and that's how I afforded my gaming habits. And Lynx was one of the systems that I bought. And true, very true. Very underappreciated handheld. Again, way ahead of its time. We got an interview with that. Link schematics. Yeah, and fascinating thing about the Lynx is that you could hold it vertically. It was kind of designed to be held vertically. Tate mode for modern audiences that aren't aware of that. You play it left or right-handed. Really amazing piece of technology. Absolutely wonderful game system. Not enough games for it, of course, because it was Atari in the 90s, but still amazing. Ninja Golf on the 1700. Never owned this one, but strangely enough, kind of an interesting idea. Not really all that well executed, but certainly interesting. It'd be funny to see if somebody took this idea and made a modern game of it. I think it would be something that people would want to play. Ninja Golf, one of the most notorious games on the Atari 1700, thanks to its incongruous pairing of game genres. Ninja Golf finally answers the question of what would happen if you had to fight ninjas, sharks, and fire-breathing dragons while playing 9 holes. Basketball. I think I own this one. This one was actually pretty good. Kind of a take on like NBA Jam or Arch Rivals. Fatal Run, the 2600 version of Fatal Run. After 12 years of support, Atari released the last games for the Atari 2600 platform in 1990. One of the final releases was a 2600 version of Fatal Run. With 32K of memory, it was 16 times the size of the VCS launch game Combat and had all sorts of features that Atari designers in the 1970s could never have imagined. Okay, so they have put the 1700 version. Let's play this one. Oh, he's got a real jerk. Nah, I don't even know what all these power-ups do. Except for the machine gun. That one's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know, not much going on in the game. Certainly if you had this and you're competing with the NES, which would have been the major competition at the time, I think this would have been a hard sell. You know, if you look at something like, you know, Rad Racer or Outrun on like the Sega Master System. Yeah, boy, not enough going on in that game. Cool art though. Give it that. Scrapyard Dog, yes, I own this for the links. I don't think I ever owned the 7800 version. Again, it was kind of hard to get a hold of the 7800 games by this time in 1991. Not a lot of people were carrying it. Yeah, $700 and the Lynx version. The redesigned Lynx, which is the one I still own. Unfortunately, the original Lynx, the fat Lynx, is you know, didn't survive one of my moves. You know, I actually like that design more than the slim version. But you know, c'est la vie. Turbo Sub, I actually own this one for the Lynx. Pretty fascinating game. Again, using that 3D blitter for a you know, full 3D experience, and on the Lynx handheld, it looks fantastic. Blown up to your modern TV, not so good looking, but still a really good game. Basketball Lynx version, I don't think I own this one. Lynx price drops to $80. And the infamous Jaguar. On November 23rd, 1993, Atari began test market shipments of its new home console, the Jaguar, to New York and San Francisco. Atari advertised it as the world's first 64-bit gaming system in an attempt to leapfrog the 32-bit game machines that were beginning to be released. Its launch price was $249.99, and it used cartridges rather than CD-ROMs. Also, the infamous controller, at least the 3-button version. The 6-button version was better. But not true 6-button, since it just added 3 more buttons, smaller 3 buttons that were just mapped to the keypad. So, in a throwback to the early days of the console business, the Atari Jaguar controller included a number pad. Some games included plastic overlays that could be placed over this pad, showing the button functions. In all, the Jaguar controller had 17 button inputs. Obviously, not practical to use the keypad for a lot of stuff. You know, they were kind of relegated to secondary functions, generally. Cybermorph. So this game is fascinating. Every time I've seen somebody play Cybermorph, essentially people have been playing this game wrong. And I can understand, because Cybermorph is, at first glance, something that looks like Star Fox. But Cybermorph is not Star Fox. Cybermorph is a 3D exploration game. So you're actually supposed to play this game slowly and not use your maximum speed, at least generally unless you're doing it in very specific situations. So I feel that Cybermorph is one of these games that is completely misunderstood. And once you understand this game and how you're supposed to play it, it's one note, of course, you know, because all you're doing is going around and searching for pods and collecting a certain number of pods. But it's also something very like Zen-like in playing this game. So yeah, I actually consider this like one of the top Jaguar games. But again, if you're like everybody that I've ever seen play this game and they just hold the acceleration button down and zoom into a mountain, it's like, yes, you're playing the game wrong. Just like you wouldn't jump into a car and then just hit your accelerator and zoom into a telephone pole. That is also the same thing that you're not supposed to do with this game. And yeah, it's 40 levels, so it's just like these planets open up, and you finish this, and you fight a boss, and then more planets open up, and you fight a boss, and more planets open up, and you fight a boss.
Good luck.
Let's see, which button does accelerate? That's shoot. Okay, so triggers are accelerate and decelerate. So yeah, this is the speed at which you're supposed to play Cybermorph.
Good work.
And again, personally, I love this flat shaded look. I have a real attachment to this kind of look of this era of polygons. Before everything started to try to look too realistic.
Work. Well done.
In fact, I think I'll spend a fair amount of time playing this on stream,
Done.
the correct way.
Well done.
Just to sort of abandon the myth that this is somehow a very, very poor game, and it is definitely not a poor game. But it is also a game that you can completely misunderstand just by looking at it with more modern eyes.
Well,
Like if you weren't around at the time of this game coming out, and you've only seen Star Fox done in this kind of style.
done.
Then again, you completely misunderstand this game into what it really is, which is kind of a fascinating collectathon, I guess. I guess you'd call this a collectathon, although you're only collecting one kind of thing. It is fascinating to see Jaguar emulation on a modern console. So this used to be something that was, and it still is. It's still a system that's incredibly difficult to emulate due to this architecture. In fact, I've been waiting for somebody to work on those Mr. cores in order to get the Jaguar working. But, this runs exactly the way I remember it running. So, kind of rough frame rate, obviously. But this was the standard, I mean, it runs faster than Star Fox, but it is a free roaming game.
Good work.
The Star Fox is a completely different experience. That's why it is a bit unfair when people see this game and go, "Oh, is that Star Fox?" No, it's not Star Fox, and it's absolutely not trying to be Star Fox. It's a much different game.
Good work.
This game lets you explore the world that they made, and Star Fox is a on rails game. And again, nothing wrong with that. Obviously, I love Star Fox, but two entirely different beasts.
Well done. Ouch. Well done. Only one more. Portal now open.
Yep, you collect all the doodads, and head to the portal, and go to the next world. And yeah, that's the game. I mean, it's again not Star Fox. Meant to be played slowly. As a game of exploration.
Good luck. Well done.
But yeah, like I said, I'll spend a whole session just playing Cybermorph. It's one of my it's definitely a game that I really hold dear. A lot of fun with that game. Yes, the infamous Trevor McFur. Again, you guys know me. I love my shmups, but this is in the same category as like Deep Blue on the PC Engine. Not really a good game, but a very good-looking, not good game. And again, just high-resolution JPEG in the background scrolling. But certainly more color than you ever would have seen coming out of a lot of games of this era. So I think it's why it's kind of fascinating, as a graphic But yeah, so very much a one-note game, whereas Cybermorph is a fairly a fairly deep game. This is the opposite. This is about as simple as you can possibly get. Yeah, all the stages are like way too long. Not a whole lot of variety. But again, fascinating use of color. Which is, very pleasing to the eye, but, no complexity, no parallax scrolling. No animated tiles. Very, very simple gameplay. Not a whole lot of thought put into the design, it's just like throw all sorts of stuff at you. Very much European design, Amiga style shmup. Super duper bullet sponge. A little bit of slowdown there, which would have been present in the original Jaguar. I mean, the game did run solid, even though there wasn't much to it. I mean, this does feel very much like an unfinished game. Like they just kind of got the engine up and running and threw some stuff together. Yeah, certainly not a good game. Like I said, Cybermorph is actually a good game. Trevor and Prefer in the Crescent Galaxy, not so much. Evolution Dino Dudes. Yeah, this is most people know this as Humans or the Humans. Great game. Very much like Lemming style gameplay. Known on other platforms as the Humans, Evolution Dino Dudes is a platform puzzle game in which you have to lead a tribe of early humans through a series of puzzling levels. Again, excellent game, but certainly not a showcase for a 64-bit system, right? Let's see. The Lynx version, Malibu Bikini Volleyball, originally announced as Malibu Beach Volleyball. The sports game for Lynx was eventually retitled to put the focus on the handful of pixels worth of attire sported by its competitors. Now, Lynx advertisement, yeah. Tempest 2000. This was the game that really put Minter on the map. Of course, Minter was doing a lot of games in the demo scene of the Amiga and the Atari ST days, but this was the game that I think sold about as many Jaguars as it could. I think once people saw this, and again, this may not be as impressive since there is Tempest 2000 or Tempest 3000 and 4000, but for its time, the sound, the graphics were really something, and not anything you could get on any competitor's platform. In fact, I think I bought the OST of this game, which is quite a different experience than the music they ended up using or generating with the Atari sound chip. In some ways, I kind of prefer this music versus the the more professional, well produced, well orchestrated music. with more complexity in the songs. Something about this very, very simple arrangement. Yeah, oddly enough, they did offer versions of this game for like the PlayStation 1, but vastly inferior to the Jaguar version in terms of its play. Slightly better visuals because it was using, the PlayStation was a much more sophisticated machine. But yeah, didn't play anywhere near as well. Wasn't anywhere near as fun. And a lot of the effects were missing from that PlayStation version. Which I guess Mr. didn't have anything to do with. And it really shows, I said that the game somehow manages to, have a different set of effects, and look better, but just play like garbage compared to this game. I know that might surprise some people who are fans of, Tempest X1, but yeah, not good compared to this game. Again, one of the best games on the system, along with Defender 2000, which he followed up with as well. Although Defender 2000 is a much harder game to get a hold of. Club Drive, terrible game. But I ended up playing a lot of this with a friend because it had a 2-player mode. But yeah, this is not a good game at all, isn't it? It's just not good. The Jaguar CD. I actually owned a Jaguar CD, and for a long time I used it to play my music CDs because it had that the virtual light show, which is fairly common nowadays for music players to have a kind of a visual player that does images along with the beat of the music. But was not very common, and so having this CD-ROM also play some visuals with the music in time with the music. It's an incredible thing back in these days. Atari had always planned to release a CD-ROM upgrade for the Jaguar, although it suffered many delays. It was eventually released in September of 1995 at $149.99, which by that time was also the price of the Atari Jaguar-based console. Super Asteroids and Missile Command. I don't think I ever owned this one. Spot the Elephant. Yeah, October 1995, Atari had once again reduced the price of the Jaguar to $149.99, as it was now dealing with a new group of competitors, the 30-bit CD-based Sega Saturn and PlayStation. New series of advertisements once again attempted to make the case for buying a Jaguar. The Pro Controller, which I actually still own one of these. I think I own 2 of these. Kind of hard to find now, but definitely the controller to get if you still have a Jaguar or looking for a Jaguar. And also, not a whole lot produced, so good luck if you're looking for one of these. But pretty durable. I mean, I think I had very little wear and tear on mine. Ruiner Pinball, pretty interesting. Not as good as something like Alien Crush or Devil's Crush, but still a fun pinball game. Probably more fun than most. Yeah, but the ball physics nowhere near as good as Alien Crush or Devil's Crush, or anything that was developed by Naxat. But then again, few games are, as far as video pinball games go. But, you know, it definitely has that Devil Crush vibe to it. Anyway, kind of fun game. Certainly not not a top tier pinball game, but fun. Missile Command 3D. Again, this was actually originally meant for the VR headset, which never came out. But regardless of which, is actually still a pretty fun take on Missile Command. I ended up playing a lot of this as well. Jaguar VR, yeah, kind of wish it was still a thing, but I don't even think the prototypes exist anymore. Atari carts. This is closer to like Super Mario Kart than or SNES Super Mario Kart. So you know, not as good, but it's that same kind of technology with the flat plane. Yeah, I guess we'll just check it out for a minute. Again, not a terrible game, but certainly nothing that could compete with. You know, with a PlayStation or a Saturn, and I don't think many people will find this anywhere near as fun as just Super Mario Kart. But you know, I think a competent enough kart racing game. Yeah, that's it. Competent enough. Not a terrible game in any stretch of the word, but unlike this game, which is actually a terrible game, Fight for Life, I actually own this one. So, final game developed and published by Atari for the Jaguar, the political martial arts game Fight for Life was directed by Francois-Yves Bertrand, who worked at Sega's seminal 3D fighting game Virtua Fighter. Although Sega will never formally comment on whether or not Francois worked there. But yes, not a good game. Feels like an incomplete game. But check it out. Since I don't think a lot of people have seen this game. I know, even the demo was just everybody just standing around. Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not seeing. Oh god, what was the name? Ultra Vortec. That was actually, I mean, certainly not a good fighting game in terms of featuring a lot of combos, but really fascinating visuals, good soundtrack, good characters. But that was kind of before the combo based one-on-one fighting game. It didn't have that in mind. But Ultra Vortec is another one that I would look for to play. Just kind of as a little fascinating game. Yeah, I think we had to. There we go. Choose our player. Yeah, the AI really is this brain dead. Like I said, it feels like the game was never finished. I'm sure this actually could have maybe been something. But as it is, it's sort of like it's like a beta phase of a game. Beyond the alpha, certainly, you can play it. But yeah, not very refined fighting system. Impressive graphics though for the Jaguar, I will say. It doesn't really compete with Virtua Fighter on the Saturn, obviously, but for what it was, interesting. Jaguar's in. At the beginning of 1996, Atari had only sold a total of 125,000 Jaguar systems and still had 100,000 unsold systems in its inventory. At this point, it began planning to leave the console business. Atari merged with a hard disk manufacturer called JTS later that year and sold its inventory to a liquidator, bringing an end to Atari's gaming business. I'm sure whoever had those 1,000 units is, or 100,000 units is, wishing they still had that 100,000, considering the price of a Jaguar nowadays. And then, of course, the new Jaguar, or the new Atari. Not to be confused with the Atari that we have been reading about. But in 1998, the toy company Hasbro acquired the Atari assets, which it then sold to the game publisher Infogrames in 2000. In 2003, Infogrames renamed itself to Atari Incorporated and is now known as Atari SA. In 2021, Atari released the new Atari VCS, a mini PC inspired by its classic consoles. And in 2020, Atari launched Atari Recharge, a series of modernized reimaged versions of Atari classics such as Missile Command, Centipede, Asteroids, Gravatar for PCs and consoles, of which we've played. I think we played all of them that have been released on the consoles. The 2600 homebrew scene, which is still active. Co-founder Nolan Bushnell reflects on the history of the company and conversation with the current CEO, Wade Rosen. 50 years later, Atari fans won't let its story come to an end. Not only does their passion for the classic games continue, but they are constantly creating new games and experiences for the classic Atari hardware for the next 50 years. Yeah, so I think we'll stop it there. This is audap. You've been watching Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, running on PlayStation 4. Although, well, actually, this is a PlayStation 5 native app, so we're actually running on PlayStation 5. Again, it's also available on the Switch. I did not see this available in the Xbox Store. Maybe it's going to be coming later, but for right now, Switch and PlayStation 4 5 only, along with a PC version. Yeah, I think this is fascinating. I think It's well worth the price to get all the history and all the little mini documentaries. So if you're a fan of Jurassic classic gaming, not just classic gaming, not just what you consider an old school game, which for some people would be like a 360 game, depending on how young you are. Maybe even gamers nowadays thinking PlayStation 3 games are classic games. But yeah, if you're beyond the classics, beyond the NES, beyond the Master System, then this is a pretty interesting look at the company that was known as Atari and has been transformed over the years through different owners and different names. And I think as that is, it's certainly worth the price of admission if you're fascinated with it. And it is nice to see some of the old games preserved, especially some of these games that were just in the prototype phase or not widely distributed. Some of those 2600 games, I've never seen before, and some of the arcade games that, it's certainly been a long time since I've ever seen a working version of some of those arcade games. It is also fascinating to have some Jaguar games under emulation in some sort of official capacity and that actually run at full speed. That's very impressive. Not every Jaguar game, unfortunately. I mean, I would have liked to have seen more Lynx and Jaguar games in this collection. But I understand, it would be hard to push, to put every single game on here. Again, I would have liked to have seen, Ultra Vortec. I would have liked to have seen Battle Morph, the sequel to Cybermorph, which was on Jaguar CD. I would have liked to have seen Alien vs. Predator, although that would have been a licensing issue. I still think that that particular version of Alien vs. Predator is, one of the premier horror games, strangely enough, because that game is frightening. Certainly reminds me of a lot of Alien Isolation, except I think more embedded into that Alien Predator universe. I know it's kind of hard to play now because it runs at a low frame rate, but certainly back then at the time, there was nothing else like Alien versus Predator, and Rebellion did a great job. And Rebellion still makes games nowadays. It's a shame they couldn't have got it on here, or Battle Morph. Would have liked to have seen Battle Morph, but for what they do have here, I think it's a pretty good selection of games. Even if you buy them just to play these classic games, I think you're still going to get your money's worth. Even if you discount all of the documentary material, although that makes up a bulk of this collection. So definitely check it out. I mean, I recommend it. Again, if you're a Jurassic gamer like me and you grew up playing these very, very early games, or even if you're just fascinated by the early age of gaming. Check it out. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching. I will see you at the next stream.